Good afternoon. Tom Johnson here with another edition of Fair Game Laguna Beach. As always, I'm joined by our mayor, Alex Rounaghi. Mayor, it's great to see you. And I'm also joined by our city manager, Dave Kiff. And Dave, you and I go back a ways, and it's always great to see you. So I'm excited about today's little podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Good to see you too.
And Mayor, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tom, and very excited to have the city manager joining us,
Yeah. So
elevating the discourse than when it's just the two
That's
of us,
right.
right,
That's
Tom?
right. And we know we need that. So this is good. It'll get us back on track. Listen, I think one of the reasons we wanted to have the city manager on here is some great things are happening in community development. It's always one of those. I mean, it can be a problem area for some communities that get bogged down in all of that stuff. And there's been some reform efforts going on in the department that I think we want to brag about a little bit today and talk about some of those milestones. Can I turn it over to you to Dave to give us a little update on that?
Sure, and I appreciate the attention to it because I do think the team that's been working on this, it's an internal team led by a lot of good folks in community development who recognize the problem. They've done some really important work. And I want to talk a little bit about the numbers since we started work on this. One of the things we wanted to do is actually start to track progress, and I think there's value just in doing that because what is it? That isn't monitored or isn't measured doesn't always make progress. So I'm botching that one. But so we started in August of 2024 with this backlog, and this backlog was people who had complained very rightfully that their applications were stuck somewhere. They hadn't heard from anybody about them. And these are people's homes, oftentimes, homes and remodels. So the majority of their investment, certainly in Laguna Beach, is just sitting there stuck as costs go up and time for mortgages and all those property taxes just extend. So back in August, we had 72 projects just pending, which is quite a few pending and pending for review. In other words, in our side of the counter. And the average turnaround time was 57 days. So we've made steady progress from them, and we're reporting to the council this coming week, it's our regular progress update, that we got those 72 are down to 47, and none of them are stuck. In other words, each one of them has been responded to, and none of our projects are taking more than 30 days on our side of the counter. So we went from 57 to under 30. And in fact, the average is now 14 days. So,
Wow, that's some major
um,
progress.
so yeah, pretty good progress. And I'm proud of the team that worked on this. And all this while the actual number of applications in, there's a churn, right? The number of applications in went from 192 back in August. So there were 192 either with the applicant's designer or with us. And now we're still up to 276. So we sped it up even though we had more volume, and I'm really proud of the team for working on that. And I'll stop there and happy to talk about it some more.
No, that's so great. I remember it must have been about a year ago that I actually got called by somebody in Laguna Beach that was bogged down in that. And went to their home and they were looking for like what can we do for help. It might even been longer than a year ago, but you walk through their house and they had two young kids and the kids were running around in this house that was in disrepair and everything like that, and your heart kind of bled for them. So it's great that you're getting your arms around this, Mary. You must feel a great sense of accomplishment to see the city manager lead something like this and get it down so much.
Well, absolutely. And at the council level, we're not there every day at City Hall to be responsible for clearing the backlog. So that's all the credit goes to staff for doing that. But what we've done is we've asked for I think it's every other, no, we get a monthly progress report from city staff on the community development backlog. And so this upcoming report will be a good one. And I spent, Tom, when you were away, I spent a day behind the counter and just trying to understand what's going on with our community development department. Because while we're not there day to day, we're not involved in that, even though I feel like I am involved sometimes because I get so many emails from residents who have concerns, and I actually have gotten less emails recently, which is good. But what I think longer term, and Dave can speak more to this, is we really need some systemic reforms to just our code in general to make it more predictable, streamlined, and easier for people, for residents and businesses to navigate. And that's not to say that we want to fundamentally change our design review process, but instead focus on eliminating unnecessary regulations that are not critical to the character of Laguna Beach and focusing on the ones that are, which is going to ultimately create a more predictable, streamlined, cost-effective process. Because I think at the end of the day, what we have when it takes a year to get a permit approved, what that is a tax on our most valuable asset, which is time, right? And our residents don't deserve that from their government. And so I'm so grateful for the city manager and his leadership on this and all the members of the community development team who have been responsible for making this happen because we have a very unique code.
So, Dave, I'm sure you monitored this and got updates throughout the process. What are the types of things that bogged us down?
We had a lot of staff turnover, and a lot of that means new staff coming in who you can be incredibly smart and coming in, but you still have to learn Laguna Beach's complex code. So as Alex is talking about, we need to make that simpler, but in a good Laguna way. And that means kind of clearing out the things that don't matter as much, minor approvals that still are bureaucratic. So that's what Alex and the council have been working on, is to try to have an ordinance that says, again, let's clear this. If you got a jar, the small pebbles, let's clear those out of the way and just focus on the big stuff, major remodels and new construction. And those would continue to go through the normal pipeline of design review, which takes a long time. But the smaller things, maybe you don't have any design review at all. Sometimes maybe you have a pathway you could choose if you want to build a smaller house, that it's purely objective design standards, so that you have an envelope, kind of like they do. I know Tom, up in Newport, there's an envelope there that you can build under. So our envelope would be smaller. And if you wanted to exceed the envelope, then you go through design review, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
The other reforms we're trying to do outside of changing the code are, just be more diligent, especially in first plan check. One of the complaints that Alex gets and that I get that I think bugs everybody the most is, hey, this plan check comment came in on the third round,
Mhm.
and it really makes me have to move and re-engineer my project. So we call that a late hit. So if we can no longer have late hits by being more diligent with the first round plan check, I think we can succeed better. So as Alex saw when he was at the desk, I think the planning techs now have a 300-point checklist. That's how complex our code is, to make sure they're addressing everything
Yeah.
in the first plan check. And then the applicant's designer gets it, and they should address every one of those comments. And you could actually get out of Laguna Beach as planning department with one plan check if you were really diligent in both those areas.
So, Alex, it seems like part of this process is going to be back or is back in the lap of the council. What
Yes.
types of things are you working on, and what's the time frame of getting that stuff taken care of?
Yeah, so part of the reason why I went to see the planning process firsthand is I think that the best types of public policy are those that are informed by ground level experience, right? Because you could have a bunch of people in a room and come up with great ideas and great policies, but when you really see them applied firsthand is ultimately how you should design policies. It's designed for the user. And so the city council, we had a joint study session with both the planning commission and the design review. So it was a 15-person meeting. And at that meeting, we there was feedback given from ultimately the city council on an urgency ordinance that would look at streamlining a lot of our processes. A lot of this has to do with just complying with state law, which is moving towards a more objective process. And then I think it was at our council meeting last week, the city council gave direction on this urgency ordinance, which is now going to go through the process to the planning commission. Or we're going to get feedback from the coastal commission about whether this can be an urgency ordinance or if it's going to be a regular ordinance. And if it's a regular ordinance, that means that we have to go through the whole local coastal plan amendment process. And so I think that meeting is in early May, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong. But this urgency ordinance creates, whether it's an urgency ordinance or a regular ordinance, it really streamlines a lot of our processes, moves more things from a discretionary design review hearing to an administrative one. So it's really, I think, a positive step forward, and it's going to allow us to keep making progress on the current approach, because really I don't think that the current approach is sustainable, even though it's amazing that we were able to reduce the time on these commons now. It's just not sustainable going forward in terms of what planners are looking for a career, and how we can create an experience where residents don't have to hire, a consultant to basically navigate the process. That's my goal at the end of the day, is to have a user-friendly process where the expectations are clear, and if you comply with the rules, you're approved. If you don't, then you go for, to design review to try to figure out whether that not complying is appropriate. And so I don't know, Dave, if you want to comment more about the specifics of this ordinance and how it's going to change things, that might be helpful for the listeners.
Yeah, you've identified the kind of the step down. Some things will go from the design review board to a simpler hearing. Some will go from a simpler hearing now to no hearing at all because they'll be exempt from design review. And I think that, again, just that will both improve the customer experience. Because again, we kind of have to force people to approve some silly things. In some cases, things like paint color and different roofing permits, where in most places those are just over the counter kinds of permits. So we're trying to be more like that, but without sacrificing what makes Laguna special. And that is this overall concept of, for larger projects, we still have design review. We still want neighborhood character protected. We still want views protected.
So it sounds like a lot of the initial onus will be on the people submitting the more minor developmental plans.
A
You-
lot of the benefit, I think, will be to them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Yeah.
So you come in, you do it right, it'll be a lot
Exactly.
easier.
Right. And in terms of workload, if I can clear those off the planner's table so they don't have to deal with these as much, or if at all, they can focus then on the major remodels and keep those on a faster track.
Yeah, good. So, Mayor, you mentioned the Coastal Commission. Sometimes I think people get it in their heads, and correct me where I'm wrong here, is, uh-oh, Coastal Commission, it's going to take a while. Is that something you're talking about, an emergency ordinance? Is that something that can get through the process fairly quickly, or is that something we're going to be waiting on?
Well, it depends. If we get an urgency ordinance, then we could put that into effect immediately and then go through the normal local coastal plan amendment process, which is a lengthy process. And what I like about that approach is it allows us to basically test out this urgency ordinance and see it firsthand. And then we can always make changes after the fact, based on how it's being implemented. And then use that to inform going through the coastal commission process. I think one of the keys with the Coastal Commission is having very early outreach with them. That's how we were able to be successful on our when we changed the ordinance to allow for second story housing in the commercial zone. It was supposed to take a lot longer than it did, but we were able to do it on an expedited time frame because we had early communication with them. We were able to get their feedback early in the process and incorporate some of their changes. So then we didn't have to deal with a long process. But at the end of the day, I think, that's why it's good to have an experienced city manager like Dave Kiff, who knows how to work with people across different levels of government, because he's been working with the Coastal Commission in Newport Beach as well. And um, so we're hoping the
That's
Coastal
exactly where
Commission.
I was going to go, is I was going to
Okay.
say, I mean, take this as a compliment, Dave. You've been around for a while, and but I would think with that, and especially your experience, up in Newport Beach and now in Laguna and everything, you probably have a long-term relationship with the Coastal Commission and kind of understand and know the processes.
Yeah, and it's mostly a good relationship too. A number of the names that I used to work with when I was in Newport are still there. In fact, the South Coast District Director is a gentleman we worked with a lot. And I think, just as Alex was saying, they just don't like to be surprised. So this efficiency ordinance is really about how we process things. It's not about giving away anything or compromising a coastal resource. So we're hopeful that they'll understand that this is both our attempt to comply with state law in terms of turning around things quickly and our attempt to make it simpler, but with, well, still full respect for the Coastal Act.
Now, it sounds great. Would you say Laguna Beach, with this issue that they've been facing over recent time, is that what you would think the majority of the cities in California are, or do most of them not have that problem?
Like the discretionary nature of our process.
Yeah, just taking longer and things like that and getting the backlog. Are most cities like that?
Well, I think most, so in my day job, I'm in development, and every city that I'm working in has a shortage of city planners. There just aren't enough people going into the city planning industry, unfortunately. And so that's a problem that exists beyond Laguna Beach. I think Laguna Beach has specific problems in the sense that most cities do not have a discretionary process for single family homes. And so a lot of people who become planners, they don't necessarily they want to be working on mixed use projects and apartment projects and really more complex developments. They don't want to be involved in design review battles between neighbors and which is what we have a lot of here, unfortunately. And so I think so I think our process is unique in the sense of how discretionary it is for single family homes, but the problems that we're facing in terms of a backlog and a shortage of city planners is something that's across cities. Dave, I don't know if you have any insights um, or changes to what I just
No,
said.
that's exactly right. The same when we try to recruit planners, the same scarce resource could look at, say, Laguna, hey, all I'm going to do all my career is work on residential design review approvals and discretionary approvals, or I could go to city X, Y, or Z and I could work on that a little bit, but I could also do fun advanced planning like redoing the general plan or the housing element. So I'd love us to get to that place where we can compete just like any other city for the best planners who are interested in, the most challenging roles. The other thing that we have just recently done that other cities have done faster is implement electronic permitting. And Laguna just is careful and in some cases slow about implementing things like that. So we just went online in just January of this year, and it has helped us with the backlog. But other places around us have had it for a couple of years, and it you don't even have to come into City Hall anymore
Well,
for many ministerial permits.
that's good stuff. Listen, it sounds like there's a lot more to this. We got to stay on top of this, in coming weeks and months and whatever, and just see how the continued progress is going. Want to touch on a couple other things before we head out. Um, we have a tourism stewardship town hall coming up. There's a survey in town. One of you two want to talk about it?
Yeah, so today, Thursday, which is when you'll be watching this, um, at 5:30 at City Council, there will be a town hall. We've spoke about this last week as well, and this will be recorded if you miss it. There will also be our survey about stewardship and preparing for the summer is on the city website on the main page, and that will be out for another week. And our goals are to prepare for the summer, what I think I've heard be described as the surge, where we ensure that we have the resources in place so that we can mitigate the impact of visitors on the lives of residents. Because during the summer months, we all experienced that last summer, and our goal is to be on top of it and proactive in how we address it in this next summer and beyond. Because stewardship of our natural resources is critical in Laguna Beach, and we want to make residents' quality of life better. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we're always about, whether it's, the community development department that we just described, which has a huge impact on residents' quality of life, right, in terms of how long it takes to do a remodel, or dealing with the impact of visitors, which under the Coastal Act, we can't stop people from coming to the beach, nor necessarily should we. But what we can do is ensure that we have the resources to keep our beaches clean and mitigate any activity that undermines the quality of life for residents.
Well, and I think it's a good thing when you have, in both areas, whether it was community development or
Yeah.
now it's, that we're talking tourism, is you're affording the community the opportunity to come to the town hall, to
Yep.
be heard, to talk about their concerns. you're throwing a survey out there. So, the people not only that are watching this, they should tell their neighbors if it's a problem for them, get engaged on the front end of it rather than afterwards complaining once the surge hits. Um, Finally, a week or so from now, we have Arbor Day. Mayor, you going to plant any trees?
We're going to plant some trees. This was rescheduled because we got rained out of the previously scheduled Arbor Day, because I think that was last month, as I recall, or
Okay.
maybe it might have been even the month before. But as a city, we want to do more in terms of planting trees, and I've spoken to the arborist about this because we're a tree city and we love trees, and we should be planting as many trees as we can. And so, looking forward to celebrating Arbor Day.
Yeah. And there's another thing coming up. I think it's Earth Day comes up in another week or so. The funny thing about Earth Day, Alex, somebody like you thinks, wow, Earth Day's probably been around forever, and I know I'm older than Dave, but I can remember the first Earth Day, and we talked about it. I believe I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, and we talked about, nobody getting a ride to school, and you ride your bikes or you walk or you do all these things, and it's come a long way. But normally things like that are a regular part of life or whatever seem like they've been around forever, but they was actually developed in my lifetime, but maybe we'll catch up on that at a later time. Listen, guys, I really appreciate both of you taking the time. Fantastic stuff that's going on in the community development department. Good town hall plan for tomorrow. Thanks again for the time, and look forward to catching up with you around town. Thanks.
Great to see you, Tom.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
See you.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks,
Bye.
Dave.